Want to have your very own free-range egg farming business? Welcome to Green Grass Egg Farming Podcast with Daniel O'Brien, the show dedicated to giving you the latest tips, ideas and interviews to help you produce the best tasting free-range eggs and sell your eggs for the highest price. And here's your host, Daniel O'Brien.
Daniel O'Brien here. Welcome back to Green Grass Egg Farming. I have another very special guest today, Adam Walmsley from Buena Vista Farm. Welcome.
G'day, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm very much looking forward to today's podcast because we've known each other for a few years now, and I love going to your farm because it's just a brilliant farm. If it's not on the ocean, it's pretty close to the ocean. I tell people about your farm, you could hit a golf ball into the water. Would that be about right?
Yeah, pretty. If you're Tiger Woods, I think you'd manage it. So
yeah, okay.
We're very fortunate. It's a nice location. There's a few distractions.
Yeah, okay. Tell me a bit about your farm and the location. So for people that have never been to your website or your Facebook page, just describe your farm and what it looks like and where it is.
Sure. So we're located at Gerringong, which is on the south coast of New South Wales, about 2 hours south of Sydney. We're right on the coast, and we've got the escarpment behind us. My family, Fee, my wife, it's her family farm. So the Weirs have been farming here since the 1850s. And up until recently, it was very much dairy country. So this farm has always been run as a dairy. And until about, I think it was the year 2000 that Fee's dad sold the herd just before deregulation came in. And he was sort of in semi-retirement then, and we were still living in Sydney. And then we came down and sort of thought, well, we've got this farm here, we may as well, have a crack at doing something with it. But it's lovely open pasture, quite rich volcanic basalt soils, about 1.4, 1.5 metres of rain a year in a dry year. So we're very fortunate there. We've got pretty good fertility.
Yeah.
Not many trees. It's a pretty open, because it's been cleared by the cedar cutters originally, and so we're working on sort of doing a lot of tree planting and bits and pieces. But no, it's a good place to start. The size, it used to be, we farm 18 acres now, which is a tiny little farm. The original farm used to be much bigger, about 200 acres. And over the years, chunks have been sold off to, deal with family succession and things. But we feel fortunate to have access to that 18 acres. And it's actually, surprisingly, it's more than enough for us. Like we laugh at how busy we are just with that land size, and I don't think we're in any hurry to get anything more. We make the most of it.
It's interesting, small farms. I've heard stories. You'll have people sort of out west, like New South Wales, and they've come off like 5,000 acres, like huge farms, and they move to the coast somewhere to semi-retire, and they buy like 100 acres, and like, this will be a breeze. I had 5,000 acres. What they sort of forget, and they learn pretty quick, it's like, if you want to earn the same money from 100 acres as you did 5,000, you've got to farm it a little bit more intensively.
Yes.
Now, that compounds for you. You've got 18 acres, and we'll talk about soon all the things you do on that farm and all the layer of farming. But first, before you said 2000, your father-in-law got rid of the herd, so you're ready to move down to the farm. Tell me a bit about your background. What were you doing before you were a farmer?
Yes, I didn't have a background in farming. I grew up in Armidale in northern New South Wales, so grew up in the country, but not on the land. So I was a retailer pretty much my whole professional working life, and I worked for IKEA for many years, big Swedish furniture retailer. So I'm very good at Allen keys and instructions and getting lost in mazes of buildings.
Good.
Not so relevant for sort of practical hands-on farming, so to speak. And Fee, she's got a very diverse background. She's a medieval historian by sort of academic training, but then a financial services marketing person by sort of professional means. And so that took us all around the, different parts of Australia, and we worked overseas for a little while. But yeah, it's certainly not directly relevant to day-to-day farming.
Yeah, so you've both come from, would you call it a corporate background?
Yeah.
Yeah, like retail and corporate. So you made the journey onto the 18 acres. And tell me about the first, 2 or 3 years when you're like, yep, we're going to be farmers. Like, what was that like? What were some of the good, bad, and crazy things you did when you're first getting your hands dirty?
Yeah, look, it was an amazing journey. There were incredible highs and some quite sort of severe lows, as I think you'd expect when you're trying something completely new. Fee's one of 4 kids, and for years they'd been trying to work out the family succession and did anyone want to move to the farm, and none of her brothers or sisters really felt very passionate about moving back to Gerringong, but Fee always did. And so in the back of our minds for years we had this sort of, we'll go to the farm one day, but it was always the one day. And I think finally, I don't know, I just got sick of driving along Parramatta Road and the sort of rat race. It wasn't that I didn't like my job, but I thought there has to be more to life. And so I quit work quite quickly, and we moved down with absolutely no idea really what we wanted to do, apart from the fact that we wanted to make a living on the farm. So we didn't want a hobby farm, so to speak. We wanted to actually live and work and work together on a business that related to the location and the farm that we had. So we moved down and we rented a house out of town for the first year. So we weren't actually living on the farm, and that's where we had a chance to explore certain things. So we started with a couple of backyard chooks, and we bought 2 little pigs, did a lot of baking and bits and pieces, and it actually, when you challenge yourself like that, we found it quite invigorating, because you had to work out a way to make money. We couldn't go or we chose not to go and get office jobs or anything. We thought, right, we've got to make the most of this. And I think that first exploratory year, we ruled out some things that just didn't resonate with us. And then we found that, okay, you know what? Chickens are a winner. Chickens give you an income every day, like with their eggs. Pigs, they're pretty entertaining, and they're a nightmare to handle sometimes and load. But,
yes.
But they keep you in dinner party stories. So, that's if we could ever afford to have a dinner party. And then, so there were lots of bits and pieces. And then we finally moved on to the farm, and that was really the catalyst. So this is only 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's where we sort of got cracking. And we sat down and we thought, right, what are our opportunities here? And one is the view. Like, it is a pretty special location in terms of our outlook. We look at the ocean, we've got the mountains behind us. It's pretty. There's not so many farms where you've got rolling green hills to the actual surf line. So we thought, right, we have to farm the view. That's one job. And then what else can we do on the space of this sort of land size? And somebody had given me a book on Joel Salatin, the US farmer. Yeah. And he was sort of, and I think the book was called, Yes, You Can Farm, or So You Can Farm. And I go, yeah, I read it and went, yeah, I can do that. I can have a crack at it, because his philosophy is all about small sort of scale family farms, rotation, like no fixed infrastructure, rotating everything, stacking. So not just having one form of livestock, for instance, and selling direct. And all of those things, I thought, yes, I can do that. I'll give it a shot anyway. Nothing like blind ignorance.
Yeah.
So my father-in-law, he calls me the Google farmer when things are going well, because, I don't pretend to know much, or didn't when I first started. And so I just read voraciously. I Googled everything. I watched YouTube. I talked to anyone that had any experience with things. And then he calls me the fiasco farmer when things don't quite go to plan, because then I have to go up and ask him how he would do it in a proper old school farming way, and then we fix it, and then we get on with things again. But that Fee brings, and we bring quite diverse skill sets. So my background was retailing. Fee is, apart from medieval history and marketing, she's a super passionate cook and really quite passionate about sort of from scratch cooking and old school making things, that are simple and sort of the lost arts. And so we decided that actually a food business would also complement what we're doing on the farm. So one of the first things we did was actually convert part of the old dairy that was no longer used into a commercial kitchen. And that's where we started to run or produce food for markets, local markets. And then we had a lot of requests, like people wanted to learn these things. So we thought, okay, there's probably something in that. So we started running a on-farm cooking school. And today that's a big part of our overall business. So we run workshops most weekends on sort of those lost traditional arts of, how to make butter and how to make ferments and bread making and simple home dairy stuff. And that's terrific, and it complements the agricultural side of things. So the egg business and the meat bird business and the beef and the pigs really well. And I like it because it's, an average week you're doing a bit of everything. It's not, you're not just sort of specialising in one particular thing.
Yeah. And I think what we were saying before, like with 18 acres, like you need to layer that farm. You can't just go, okay, how many cattle will that hold? And because that's not going to give you much of an income. So I love what you have done with such a small parcel of land. And I think it gives a lot of people hope when they're like, oh, like whatever you've got, you always look like the grass is greener on the other side of like, oh, if you have 5 acres, you're like, oh, if only I had 18. If you have a high rainfall, oh, if only it wasn't as muddy. If you like whatever it is, it's like, I wish it was different. But
absolutely. To
see what you've done, like on 18 acres there, and you've got almost like a tourism arm of teaching things, and that's something I want to talk to Fiona about in an up and coming podcast of how does farm tourism work, because that's effectively what you've sort of tapped into. You're bringing people to the farm, you're teaching them stuff, and they get to experience your lifestyle and learn things what you are doing on the farm.
Yeah, it's a really interesting sort of facet to it, and you've got to be pragmatic, because we had that life goal of working and earning our living from the farm, so not wanting to have off farm income or somebody working off the farm, and that's where you really got to think, okay, well, you know, if I run 150 chickens, that's not really going to pay the bills.
Yeah.
You know, and then okay, well, how can I integrate, you know, beef production in that, and then a market garden, and then the other tangent of, well, how can we build our brand outside the farm, and that's, you know, food production and markets and workshops and things. So it's a bit of and it's an evolving process. So it's shaped over the last couple of years, and we're getting better at refining what is relevant and what works for us and what we get enjoyment out of, and also what's financially viable.
So tell me, what are the things you do on your farm? So I know you've got chickens. Do you still have bees?
Yeah.
How are the bees going?
The bees are tops.
Yeah.
I love bees. They're just the most fascinating creatures, and what they're able to produce. And you watch them communicating. Like you've opened a hive in, you know, the middle of summer, and you're watching them come in and do their little bum wiggle dance, and you know, the figure of eights, and they're communicating where the pollen or where the nectar is for other bees to go and track it, and they're phenomenal. And raw honey, you know, just straight out of the hive. It's pretty amazing stuff. So yes, we've got we've got about eight beehives.
Yeah.
So 4 of those are worry hives, natural or sort of top bar hives, if you like, and then 4 are Langstroth, the sort of more standard. They produce more honey, but a different way of raising the bees. So they started. We got them actually for pollination and for farm fertility, and the honey is a sort of a byproduct that we're still pretty happy with. But we certainly don't work them super hard, and it's not about maximising the absolute honey flow, because we want a good sort of environment for everything else on the farm.
So that's the pollination for the market garden, or?
Yes, market garden, and then our sort of growing food forest and things as we're planning more and more things around the farm.
Yeah.
But we started with chickens, so that was way back when. We actually started with a little fixed yard and, you know, 50 chickens, and that grew until we got one of your caravans, the little one, the 130, and then we got a second caravan. So we're running layers, and then we also got into meat birds. So we currently, and that's probably the biggest component of our agricultural output at the moment, is pasture-raised meat birds.
Yeah.
We followed the Joel Salatin sort of, you know, pens for a little while, but they didn't really work for us on our terrain, and also with our winds and the temperature in summer. So we've changed the shelters a bit, and we do day ranging. Basically, we're using electrified poultry nets, the same ones that we use around the layers.
Yeah.
And that's really good, and we're very proud of the product there. Ironically, now we actually stopped selling eggs because all the eggs go into our custard production. So custard is one thing that we sell through the farmers market. So we're using a local milk from a local dairy, and that's a bit of a cult product now. In addition to that, we've got some pigs. We've got 2 breeding sows at any one time, and we borrow a boar regularly, and then we just grow out probably sort of that equates to 2 litres a year.
Yeah.
Per pig, and we sell that direct off the farm once it's been butchered. And then we've got 6-7 head of beef, so tiny, you know, massive herd, massive. But they're our lawnmowers, short-legged Angus, and they're great. So they're obviously working on, you know, using the grass and getting the grass down to the right length for the chickens, but also we process a couple of them each year. And then we've got a market garden. And that almost broke me. Well, it did break me a couple of times trying to do it, because it's about 900 square meters of beds, and it was just too much on top of, when you talk about, refining your business model, and
yes,
and that one just manual, fully labor intensive. I tried, and I just couldn't get on top of the weeds, and so we'd grow little things and then gave up. But fortunately now we found a woman called Linda, who came down from another farm, and she approached us to say, hey, look, I think you need me. And so we share farm now. So Linda runs the market garden as her business. We harvest from it as we need for our own business needs, and she sells the surplus as her income, and she also works on the farm helping as well. And that's I'm really stoked with that, because it's a lovely partnership, and it fits in. There's a synergy. Like, we like having the market garden on the farm. It's great for our cooking workshops and things like that. We're also using fertile, productive land and getting an outcome, and Linda's creating a living out of it, and also, getting a benefit of living on a farm as well. So that's pretty good. And then we've got the bees, and we've also got coffee. We've got 100 coffee trees, which isn't really a commercial size crop, but it does keep us in coffee. We produce about 60 kilos of green bean coffee a year, which is enough for us as a family to get through. And then we run a few workshops. And if you come and do a workshop on the farm, you're always drinking our coffee, which is, something nice.
Yeah, I remember when I was first at your farm, and I'm not like, I drink coffee occasionally, but I'm not like a coffee connoisseur that looks for coffee every day. And you're like, oh, do you want a coffee? I'm just like, oh yeah, okay. And then I know it was you or Fiona said, like, the coffee is grown on the farm and we roast. I'm like, what? Like, I thought coffee is like grown in countries like I know we grow a bit in Australia, but I know that we're not a coffee growing country. I'm like, how does that work?
Yeah.
And I remember you showing me, you got these coffee trees because you don't get frost there. Is that the reason they were planted back in the day?
Yeah, it's Fee's dad when he retired from dairying, because as you know, when you're a farmer, you can't actually retire. You've got to still have stuff to do.
Yeah.
So there was talk at the time of creating a South Coast coffee growing cooperative, and in the end, it was only a few farmers that put any trees in, and this was a test crop that went in an old dairy lounging paddock, so it was incredibly fertile. And it's got a little microclimate created with windbreaks around it. So, and we're so close to the coast that we rarely get any significant frost. And so it shouldn't. As you say, it's a tropical plant that grows at altitude, and so we grow it in the subtropics at sea level.
Yes,
but it thrives. It's really good. It's very resistant to pests and disease.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing about where we grow it is it's slightly lower in caffeine as a result of that latitude and also the altitude. But it still tastes nice, and it's a bit of a pain in the bum at coffee picking time, because it's hard work and you're picking repeatedly over sort of a 2-month period. But you forget about that when you're drinking your morning latte, and you just go, this is all right. This is 0 food miles.
Yes,
I've done that.
Yeah.
So it's just something a bit different, and it doesn't take up too much time in the total picture of things.
Yeah. One thing I love is with the market garden that you got help, and I think that's important for some people, rather than trying to do everything yourself. Bring help in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for small scale farming, the temptation is to do more and more things, and each time you're doing that, you're fragmenting. So in my corporate world, in my past life, part of my job was to analyze businesses and make sure, that you're doing the right thing and you're being efficient and you're being ruthless. Like, if it's not profitable or not contributing to a bigger goal, then, you scratch it. And then, of course, you change hats and you're your own boss on a small farm, and you just keep adding stuff. And, we'll do goats, and,
yes,
we'll get that in, and, and geese and ducks. And suddenly you realize that you've got this menagerie of animals that are all costing you a lot of money in feed and aren't delivering anything to the bottom line. And, you've got to be pragmatic about it. And part of the learning is, I think, realizing when things aren't working, or where they don't give you joy, or where they're just not effective. So we had a choice to make the market garden bigger and buy lots of machinery for it, so that we weren't hand digging anything, and it was, essentially plows and bed formers and things like that. But that's a lot of money for still very little return from a veggie garden. Whereas we wanted it just for the fresh produce and organically grown produce that we could use and value add through the commercial kitchen to sell. So we didn't want to get too big. I think I get a lot of energy out of the share farming arrangement, because I've got a second set of brains on the farm. Linda's really capable and she does a fantastic job of the market garden, but it's also nice having that extra support around the farm for when bigger jobs need doing, and I can use her skill set and abilities helping me with my bits and pieces around the place. And it's a shared enterprise, and we're both gaining something out of it, and it's an extra living income, if you like.
Yeah. So tell me when you first started with the chickens. I think you had 50 chickens. They were in a fixed coop, and you made sort of a run out one side. How did that? Did you go sort of straight to 50 chickens when you sort of moved back to the farm, or?
Oh, I think we started with 10, and then 10 was really for us. So in that first year that we moved down here, we were looking at just being self-sufficient, or as much as possible for our family. And then we realised that actually chickens are a bit of a winner. Like they're entertaining, they're giving you that daily income. And there was so much demand for fresh farm eggs. And these weren't pastured eggs. These were, a fixed yard, and they had green runs and things, and they were, let out during the day. And pretty quickly, I think we acquired a few sort of stray chickens, and we went to a chicken auction, and then we bought, a few. So we were about 50, but that was the limit of that fixed yard, really, because as you know better than anyone, they're super destructive, and if you're rotating them around, it became a management issue that we didn't want to add any more there, but we really wanted more eggs. And I read Joel's books about pastured eggs, and I thought, okay, I've got to get a mobile shelter of some description. And I'm very good with Allen keys, building stuff and anything with writing. I'm a shambles. Like it's not my strength. And so I was looking at things, and that's where we came across your website. And at the time, you were only doing the larger, the 450 caravans, and we had a really long, hard look at that, because I love the idea of not what it was in terms of just a physical shelter for the birds, but what it represented in terms of an ability to manage a flock like that on our property, where we could integrate it with all the other systems and actually, enhance the fertility of our farm rather than destroy it, and get, eggs. And also importantly, it was clicking then with me about the managing your time and labour. Like you can't treat your labour as a farmer as free, and you've got to put a dollar value on it. And so I was thinking, okay, doing the sums and then looking at your spreadsheets about, the hours that you spend collecting and washing eggs or grading them and packaging, and it really made sense. And so that's when we got talking. And at that stage, we're quite hilly, and I was concerned that a 450 was just too big a caravan to actually work on getting it level on some areas of our farm. And then, so we sort of parked it, and I started looking at converting caravans and things. And then it wasn't long after you rang up and said, hey, I've got a prototype of this smaller one. Do you want to give it a shot? And we jumped at that chance. And that was the first of the 130s.
Yeah, that was the very first one we produced. So I think I must have had a conversation with you or Fiona, and I think you asked, like, do you do a smaller one?
Yeah.
And at the time it's like, no, but we will one day. And obviously back then I wrote your name down. I thought, they're after a smaller one. So when we first came round to doing it, that's where I thought, well, we'll give these guys a call. And I hadn't met you or anything, so it was sort of great there. You were sort of prototyping this brand new model on this beautiful farm. So it was good for both of us.
Oh, it was fantastic. And when we got it, it was just such a relief to get the chickens out of that fixed yard near the house and get them onto pasture all the time. And we saw a lift in the rate of lay, and also I think the quality of the eggs improved. And I loved the fact, because until that point we'd been using fixed nesting boxes, filled with straw or wood chip or wood shavings, and I was spending proportionally so much time like cleaning eggs or collecting them frequently to try and make them, get them while they're clean.
Yes.
And it was just so nice to like look in the conveyor belt and wind them up, and there's 99% of clean eggs, and that system worked really well. So that was an integrated flock. So we moved our house hens out, and then I think it was about half and half. So I think we had sort of 50 or 60 house hens, and then we bought a new batch of hens to bring it up to the 130. And that was terrific. And it was probably, I can't remember exactly, but roughly 12 months later, that because we were selling every egg and then some, like in terms of just the demand was huge.
Yeah.
So then we bought a second one from you, and a second 130. So we started to run two. And that was, again, fabulous. And it fitted in with our overall farm plan. The rotation seemed to be fine. Like we just have sort of two phases, working the cows first, then the layers, and then often the meat birds after that. And it's really good system. And so at that stage we were that was 300 or about 300 hens on the farm laying, and more of that production went into our custard.
Yeah, so now you're at a point where you're not selling any eggs and you're using them all on farm, so value adding them on another layer. So I mean, for a small farm like us, there's not enough money in just selling your agricultural output wholesale. Yes,
really got to, and even selling it direct, you've got to be smart about what you do. So, I mean, even to this day, we're still getting heaps of requests for eggs, but the reality is it's worth a lot more to us in terms of income for us to value add those eggs that we have into our custard product, which is fantastic in itself, and it's part of the ethos of, at least a component of it is off the farm that we're selling. And it works for us, and it's a great little system.
So with the custard, is that something you sell direct from farm or at a farmer's markets? Where do you sort of retail that?
When we first started the food business, we were selling off the farm, and then after a couple of months, we realised that it wasn't a particularly efficient way of doing it, because every 10 minutes you'd get a phone call from someone saying, oh, look, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Like, can I just pick up a dozen eggs and some custard? Or, and you're going, oh, and it was lovely having that face-to-face contact and selling directly with your customers and chatting to them. But it also meant you never got any work done, because you're constantly, or you'd be up the paddock and you'd have to come back, and then you're waiting and somebody's late, and then, all for a $8 transaction. And also under our local council rules, we'd have to, if we wanted to have a farm gate sale, we had to make some significant changes to the farm in terms of driveway and turning lane access, which the investment in that kind of infrastructure wasn't the return on it through the farm gate sales that we envisaged wasn't going to be nearly enough. So then we made the decision that we would sell through a local co-op. There's a local food co-op that we support called Greenbox, which is fabulous. And then there's also some local markets. And we started by doing weekend markets, but they weren't great for us. They kept us afloat, and we did earn money, but they're a very long day. And weekend markets tend to be a lot of people just browsing, or particularly in Gerringong, they're people on holidays and having a look around, and they're not really interested in buying fresh veggies and the sort of food staples that we sold. And also all those weekend markets were only monthly, which meant we had to go to a different one each weekend, and it ate into our weekends. So then we transitioned from that to running workshops on weekends, and Svi was part of a committee that set up the Kiama Farmers Market, which was modelled on a farmers market called Sage down at Maruya. That's an award-winning one. And it's a weekday, so Wednesday afternoon for 3 hours, 3 to 6, and it's fabulous because it's every week. It's only short. Because it's in the afternoon, you can actually do a lot of your harvest or your prep the morning of, so you're getting super fresh produce. And we found that it just attracts an amazing number of locals that come and do their weekly shopping with us now. So we're blown away by the support that we get in terms of people coming every week and buying, whatever we've got as part of their integrated weekly shop. And it's so much more efficient than a weekend market for us, which is terrific. So now that's our main sales channel. So the farmers market and a little bit to the Greenbox Food Co-op, and then we've just started selling a little bit through a couple of local cafes down in Berry. So that's good, and it's something that's potentially scalable for us in the future. So the next step would be potentially to hire a few extra people. There's already one person that works part-time in a kitchen with Fee, and I think that's an avenue that we'll look at in the year to come, of seeing if we can boost the output of the food side.
Yeah, fantastic. No, it's just incredible, like 18 acres and so many enterprises. And it's interesting seeing your journey as you started, like you said, with 50 hens, and you realise, hey, they're going to destroy this area of grass and turn it to a dirt patch, and right through to, like, you got the chicken caravans, you're selling the eggs, and then you've re-looked at it and thought, we can actually make more money by value adding the eggs. And then also your retail channels, you saw the initial farmers market, and then you've now moved to sort of food co-ops and a weekday, shorter farmers market, which makes a lot of sense because I do know what you mean. Like, I think farmers markets are great for marketing, but you're right, it is a long day. There is prep that goes into it. I think where it can work, if you're doing massive volume, if you're turning up and you're selling like 100 or 200 dozen, I think it's worthwhile. But if you're there and you're only doing a transaction sort of every 20 minutes, you could be doing something else on farm that could probably be making you a lot more money. Yeah. So it's interesting to sort of see your journey. And I think with anyone, you'll see what works. What works for another farm might not work for you. Like you were saying with those meat chicken cages, you started off with something and you go, it wasn't working in your climate and your wind and whatever. And I think it's important for people to realise that. It's easy enough for someone to listen to this podcast and they go, well, I've got 18 acres, I'll do exactly that. Well, don't put coffee in if you're going to get frost. Like, you're going to be a bit upset when it all dies. So, and it does take a while of like observation of what's going to work for me. How close am I to markets? How big is my farm? Like, how many cattle and chickens can work together? So I think having that observation and giving yourself time and patience, otherwise you could be a frustrated farmer real quick. So.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with you, Daniel. I think the two skills that I've developed farming, one is a sort of ability to fix things badly, but a lot of stuff breaks, and you learn the art of it doesn't look pretty, but you can patch something while you work on a better fix, or you can repair it so that you've still got water to the farm or electric fencing and that kind of. And the other thing is observation. I think it's rarely talked about, but in a corporate world, you've got so much feedback in terms of KPIs and numbers and things. But the joy of farming is you're out there and you start to appreciate the seasons, and you're looking at pasture growth, and you're looking at your chicken health, and you're observing them, and stuff seems weird sometimes. And if it is, then if something doesn't seem right, it probably isn't, and you need to dig into it. But I love that. It's probably one of the most satisfying things about my day-to-day role at the moment is that, I love that interaction and the observation and problem solving and working on things. But you're never complete. You never finished it. You've never mastered it. I think there's so many points where you can start, but you should, as you say, carry on and find your own way that works for you, that the context is right for you, and that, gives you energy and joy doing what you do. Yeah.
And really look at like the lifestyle of what you want to create. Like I remember in the early days of when I had the egg farm and I said, we can't keep up with demand. A lot of people said, like, why don't you like double your numbers or 10 times your numbers? And I think, well, I want a lifestyle. I still want to have some time on a weekend to go kayaking or do something. So it's all well and good. You can do everything, but what do you actually want to do? And look at the lifestyle, like especially if you've got a young family and that, like what fits in. And I know a lot of people that they've got into chicken farming because their children are young and they want them involved in the farming enterprise. Now with chickens, that's easy. If you run like a beef stud, it's a bit hard to sort of draft cattle in at cattle yards with like 600 kilo beasts that are running through, and there's your 3-year-old trying to help you. So look at what do you want and what's going to work for you, because at the end of the day, like this is your lifestyle. Like farming is a lifestyle. It's like a lot of people, they could get into corporate and they might think it makes their dreams come true, and for some people it does, but for others it's like, hang on, this isn't what I was after. And I think sometimes with that observation in farming, you can create something that's good for you. And I know some people, they love farmers markets and they're there every Saturday. They love selling their eggs and that's them. It wasn't me. I was happy to do it for a season, but I thought, I can't sustain this like every Saturday, as you know, like getting up early, like preparing it all, being at your market all day, even if it's raining and things. But work out what works for you. So, and I think observation and time, give it some time, you'll find that.
Oh yes, the time thing at all. You can't rush farming. Like there's certain things that it just has to go at its own pace, and you've got to fit in with that, don't you? Yeah, pretty funny.
Yeah, I've seen many people who like bought a farm, and it's almost like day one. They're like, "Oh, let's do this," and like they haven't even had time to like know where the wet spots are. Like, so they could be putting like the cattle yards in the swamp.
And the farm is the feedback loop. Like you need to try things and then observe and see how the land responds to that and how the animals respond, and work out is that what you want? Is that the right outcome, or have you overdone it? Is it understocked? All those things. So it's a fascinating process, but it's a change of mindset from a sort of traditional job, I think.
Yes. Well, we've covered a lot today. We've covered egg-laying chickens, market garden, bees, meat chickens, pigs, beef, coffee, custard.
Dairy goats, Daniel.
Dairy goats.
He'll be cross with me. There's only 3, and that's really Fee's folly. All her life, she's wanted to make goat's cheese. So those 3 dairy goats are for her little goat, and that's not a commercial enterprise. That one's just for her love of making cheese. Yeah,
and she's making cheese now.
Not yet. They haven't kidded, so hopefully, they'll have their little kids soon, and we'll start milking them. But needless to say, they've challenged my fencing techniques, and a bit more work to be done there, I think.
I've heard goats can be quite cunning.
Total escape artists, but they're pretty entertaining. So
Well, for more information, people can go to buenavistafarm.com.au. Is that correct?
Yes. So we've got all the links and workshop information and farm information's on that website.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I'm sure we'll talk soon, and I'm sure I'll catch up with Fee on a future episode and talk about sort of farm tourism and sort of how all that works and how you got into that as well. So thank you so much for your time today, Adam.
Thanks for joining us on Green Grass Egg Farming Podcast. For transcripts and other free resources, please go to greengrasseggfarming.com.